Daniel Porter wiped the sweat from his forehead as he climbed higher up the rocky mountain path. The twin suns of Dracor Prime burned bright overhead, making the red stones beneath his boots shimmer with heat. He had been walking for 3 hours now, collecting rock samples and marking mineral deposits on his data pad. It was quiet work, lonely work, but Daniel enjoyed the peace of it. He knelt beside a cluster of blue crystals jutting from the mountainside and carefully extracted a sample. The expedition team back at base camp would be pleased with this find. These crystals could power their equipment for months. As he sealed the sample in his collection bag, something caught his eye in the distance. A bright streak of light tore across the purple sky, trailing smoke and fire. Daniel stood up quickly, his heart beginning to race. That was not a meteor. The object was too large, too controlled in its descent. It was a spacecraft, and it was falling fast. The ship crashed into the mountain about 2 miles away. The impact shook the ground beneath Daniel's feet. A massive plume of black smoke rose into the air, and he could see flames spreading across the rocks. His training told him to stay put and call for help. His instincts told him something different. Daniel grabbed his emergency pack and started running toward the crash site. His legs burned as he climbed over boulders and jumped across narrow gaps in the stone. The smoke grew thicker as he got closer. Through his protective goggles, he could see the wreckage scattered across the mountainside. The ship was huge, at least 3 times larger than any human vessel he had seen. As he approached, Daniel's breath caught in his throat. The ship's hull was covered in scale-like metal plates that gleamed even through the damage. Strange symbols decorated the side panels. His mind raced through his xenology training, and then it hit him. This was a Draconian ship. The Draconians were legendary across this sector of space. They were a warrior race, proud and fierce, with bodies like ancient Earth dragons. Humans had only made contact with them twice, and both meetings had been tense. The Draconians kept to themselves and made it very clear that they did not welcome outsiders. Daniel knew he should definitely call for backup now. Touching a Draconian without permission was considered a grave insult. Interfering with their affairs could start a diplomatic incident, maybe even a war. He reached for his communicator, but then he heard it. A sound, weak and small, a cry that reminded him of a kitten mewling for its mother. Daniel moved closer to the wreckage, carefully stepping over twisted metal and broken equipment. The heat from the fires made his skin prickle, but he pushed forward. He followed the sound around a large piece of the ship's wing that had broken off in the crash. There, pinned beneath a section of burning hull plating, was a small dragon. The creature was no bigger than a large dog, with scales that should have been bright crimson, but were now dulled by ash and injury. Its wings were crumpled awkwardly beneath its body, and one of its legs was trapped under the metal. The young dragon's eyes were closed, and its breathing was shallow and rapid. Daniel's hands shook as he assessed the situation. The metal pinning the child down was heating up quickly. In minutes, it would be hot enough to cause serious burns. The little dragon did not have much time. He thought about the protocols. He thought about the rules. He thought about what his commanders would say. Then he thought about his younger sister back on Earth, and how he would move mountains to save her if she were in danger. Daniel grabbed the edge of the metal plating. It was already hot enough to hurt through his gloves, but he gritted his teeth and lifted. The muscles in his back and arms screamed with effort. The metal shifted slightly, but not enough. He repositioned his grip and tried again, this time letting out a yell of exertion. The plating lifted just enough. Daniel quickly reached under and grabbed the dragon child, pulling it free. He stumbled backward, holding the small creature against his chest, and fell to his knees away from the fire. The young dragon was barely breathing. Its scales were scorched in places, and dark blood seeped from several wounds. Daniel cradled it carefully, supporting its head and trying not to hurt its damaged wings. He had no idea how to treat a Draconian, but he knew he had to keep it safe until help arrived. Then something strange began to happen. A warm sensation spread through Daniel's hands. He looked down and gasped. Golden flames were forming around his fingers, swirling in patterns like liquid light. The flames did not burn him. They did not hurt at all. Instead, they felt gentle, almost soothing, like warm water. The flames spread slowly across the dragon child's body, wrapping around its wounds. Daniel watched in amazement as the golden fire seemed to ease the creature's pain. The dragon's breathing became steadier. Its eyes fluttered open for just a moment, revealing brilliant amber irises that widened in shock before closing again. Daniel sat there on the rocky ground, holding an alien child in his arms, surrounded by mysterious flames that came from nowhere. His mind could not process what was happening. He had no explanation for the fire that did not burn. All he knew was that the little dragon in his arms needed help, and somehow, impossibly, he was providing it. With trembling fingers, Daniel activated his communicator with one hand while keeping the dragon child secure with the other. The golden flames continued to dance around them both, casting strange shadows across the crash site. The medical bay of the human research station buzzed with activity. Daniel sat in a corner, watching as doctors and nurses moved around the small dragon child. The golden flames around his hands had faded during the flight back to base, but he could still feel their warmth just beneath his skin, waiting. Dr. Lisa Green worked carefully, running scanners over the young dragon's body. She had treated hundreds of species during her career, but never a draconian. The child's vital signs were stabilizing, which seemed almost miraculous given the injuries it had sustained in the crash. "This is incredible," Lisa said, looking at her readings. "The healing process is happening 3 times faster than it should. Daniel, those flames you described, they did something to accelerate cellular repair." Daniel flexed his fingers, still trying to understand what had happened on that mountain. "I don't know how I did it. The flames just appeared when I picked up the child. It was like my body knew what to do before my brain caught up." Before Lisa could respond, alarms blared throughout the station. The communications officer's voice crackled over the intercom. "Commander Hudson to the command center immediately. We have incoming draconian warships." Daniel's stomach dropped. He had known this moment would come, but he had hoped for more time. He looked at the sleeping dragon child on the medical bed, its small chest rising and falling peacefully. Whatever happened next, he did not regret saving it. Commander Vance Hudson stood in the command center, staring at the display screen. 5 massive draconian warships hung in orbit above the planet, each one bristling with weapons. His years of military experience told him that humanity's small research station would not last 5 minutes if those ships decided to attack. "Open a channel," Vance ordered, straightening his uniform. The main screen flickered and a draconian face appeared. The alien's scales were deep green, and its eyes burned with barely controlled anger. "Human Commander, you have committed a grave offense. You have touched a child of our people without permission. You have contaminated her with your presence. Surrender the youngling immediately." Vance chose his words carefully. "We rescued your child from a crash site. Our medic saved her life. Surely that counts for something in your culture." "You do not understand our ways," the draconian hissed. "Physical contact without ritual permission is forbidden. What your human has done may have damaged the child's development. We demand her return, and the human responsible for punishment." In the medical bay, Daniel heard every word over the intercom. Lisa put a hand on his shoulder. "You saved a life. Don't let them make you feel guilty for that." But Daniel was not thinking about guilt. He was thinking about the golden flames, and how they had felt so natural, so right. There was something important here, something he did not yet understand. The dragon child stirred on the bed. Her eyes opened slowly, revealing those brilliant amber pupils. She saw Daniel and made a small chirping sound. Without thinking, Daniel moved closer and placed his hand near hers. The golden flames appeared again, gentle and warm. The child's eyes went wide. She touched the flames with one small claw, and they swirled around her finger like curious pets. She spoke in a voice that was barely a whisper, but Daniel understood it through his translator device. "Firekeeper, you are Firekeeper." Lisa's scanner went wild with readings. "Daniel, her brain activity just spiked. She's recognizing something in you, something specific." Over the next 2 hours, 3 more draconian ships arrived. They demanded answers. They demanded justice. Commander Hudson kept negotiating, buying time, but everyone knew time was running out. Then everything changed. A new ship appeared, larger than all the others. Its hull was decorated with silver patterns that caught the light like stars. The communications officer turned pale. "Sir, that's a war matron's flagship. That's not just military. That's royalty." The channel opened without request. The draconian woman who appeared on screen made the earlier warrior look small. Her scales were deep crimson, almost black in places, marking her as ancient and powerful. Battle scars crossed her face, but her eyes held intelligence along with fury. Armor covered her massive shoulders, etched with symbols of rank and achievement. "I am War Matron Solvara," her voice rumbled like distant thunder. "The child you hold is my daughter, Kirith. I will come to your station. The human who touched her will face me directly. If I am not satisfied with what I find, your entire base will burn." There was no room for negotiation in her tone. Commander Hudson could only agree. 30 minutes later, Solvara arrived at the station with 4 guards. She was enormous, nearly 8 feet tall, with wings that barely fit through the corridors. Every human who saw her took an instinctive step back. This was a creature built for war, covered in natural weapons and radiating controlled violence. Daniel stood in the medical bay, waiting. He was terrified, but he refused to hide. If saving Kirith meant facing her mother's anger, then he would face it standing up. Solvara entered the medical bay, and the temperature seemed to drop. Her eyes locked onto Daniel, and smoke curled from her nostrils. She took one step toward him, then another. Her claws scraped against the floor with each movement. "You dared to touch my daughter," Solvara said, her voice low and dangerous. "You dared to lay your alien hands upon a child of my bloodline. Give me one reason why I should not reduce you to ash where you stand." Daniel met her eyes, though every instinct screamed at him to look away. "Because she would have died if I didn't. I couldn't leave a child to burn no matter what species she belonged to." Solvara's eyes narrowed. "Show me." Daniel did not understand at first. Then Kirith chirped from her bed, calling out, "Firekeeper!" Daniel walked slowly to Kirith's bedside. The young dragon reached up with both small claws, making grabbing motions like a human toddler wanting to be held. Solvara's breath caught, a small sound that seemed impossible from such a massive warrior. No one told a draconian child who to trust. They simply knew. Daniel carefully lifted Kirith, supporting her damaged wings. The moment his hands touched her scales, the golden flames appeared. They wrapped around both of them, dancing and swirling in patterns that seemed almost alive. Kirith pressed her head against Daniel's chest and made a contented, rumbling sound. Solvara stared at the flames. Her guards stepped forward, hands on their weapons, but she raised one claw to stop them. "Guardian flames," she whispered. "I never thought I would see them in my lifetime." Dr. Lisa looked between the dragon matron and Daniel. "What are guardian flames?" Solvara moved closer, her massive form somehow seeming less threatening now. She reached out slowly and passed one claw through the golden fire. The flames swirled around her finger but did not burn. A single tear rolled down her scaled cheek. "It is an ancient legend among my people," Solvara said quietly. Long ago, when the draconian race was young, certain individuals could manifest protective fire. Not the destructive flames we breathe in battle, but healing fire. Guardian fire. It required absolute purity of purpose, a soul dedicated completely to protecting others. Even among draconians, only 1 in a million could do this, and the ability vanished from our bloodline centuries ago. Commander Hudson stepped forward carefully. And Daniel has this ability? He should not, Solvara said, studying Daniel with new eyes. He is human. Humans do not carry our genetic markers. Humans do not have our connection to elemental fire, yet here he stands, holding my daughter, surrounded by guardian flames that respond to his will. She paused, her expression shifting from anger to something closer to wonder. According to our oldest texts, only the purest souls can manifest this gift. Those who would give their own life without hesitation to save another. Kyrith chirped again and touched the flames with her snout. They brightened in response, and Daniel felt a warmth spread through his chest. It was not physical heat, but something deeper, an emotional connection that transcended language. Solvara straightened to her full height. Human commander, I invoke the ancient rite of flame testing. This human must prove his worthiness to bear the guardian fire. If he is truly pure of heart, the flames will protect him. If he is false, if this is some human trick or technology, he will burn. No, Lisa said immediately. You can't ask him to risk his life to prove something we don't even understand. But Daniel handed Kyrith gently to Lisa. I'll do it. If it means peace between our people, if it means Kyrith stays safe, I'll do whatever is necessary. Solvara nodded slowly. You have courage, human. That is good. You will need it. Tomorrow you will come to my flagship. The Draconian High Council will witness the trial. Prepare yourself. That night, Daniel could not sleep. He sat in his quarters, staring at his hands. The flames came when he called them now, responding to his thoughts like an extension of his own body. They were beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Patricia Cole, one of the station's engineers, knocked on his door. She entered carrying 2 cups of coffee and sat down across from him. You know you don't have to do this. We could refuse the trial, ask for Federation arbitration. That would take months, Daniel said. And in the meantime, tensions would build. Someone might do something stupid. A war could start. He made the flames dance between his fingers. Besides, I want to understand this. Why me? Why can I do something that even Draconians can't do anymore? Henry Nash, the station's linguist, arrived an hour later with old texts he had been researching. I found something interesting. The Draconian language has a word that doesn't translate well. Flamekin. It appears in their oldest religious texts, referring to other species who could share their fire. The texts say the Flamekin were lost, but that one day they would return when the universe needed them most. Daniel looked at the ancient symbols Henry showed him. They looked almost familiar, though he had never studied Draconian writing before. Do you think humans could be these Flamekin? I think tomorrow's trial will give us some answers, Henry said. The next morning, Daniel boarded a shuttle with Commander Hudson, Patricia, and Henry. The Draconian flagship loomed before them like a floating mountain. Its hull was covered in decorative scales that caught the light, and weapons platforms bristled from every surface. Inside, they were led through corridors so hot that the humans had to wear cooling suits. Draconians lined the walls, watching them pass with curious and sometimes hostile eyes. Daniel tried to project confidence he did not feel. The council chamber was enormous, with a ceiling that stretched up into darkness. 12 elder Draconians sat on raised platforms, their scales showing the gray of advanced age. Solvara stood at the center, holding Kyrith. The young dragon saw Daniel and struggled to get free, but her mother held her firmly. The eldest council member spoke, his voice like grinding stone. Human called Daniel Porter, you stand accused of violating our most sacred customs by touching a draconian child without permission. However, you have also displayed the guardian flames, which suggests a connection we do not understand. The trial of flames will determine the truth. A pathway appeared in the center of the chamber. Fire erupted along both sides, forming walls of living flame that reached toward the ceiling. The heat was intense even from a distance. You will walk this corridor, the elder explained. If your guardian flames are true, they will protect you. If they are false, the fire will consume you. There is no middle ground, no partial success. You will prove yourself worthy, or you will die. Daniel looked at the corridor of fire. Then he looked at Karith, who was watching him with wide, trusting eyes. He took his first step forward. The heat hit Daniel like a physical wall as he approached the corridor. The flames roared on both sides, hungry and wild. He could feel their intensity on his face even before he entered. Behind him, Patricia gripped Henry's arm, her knuckles white with tension. Commander Hudson stood rigid, watching. Daniel closed his eyes and thought about the moment on the mountain. He remembered seeing Karith trapped under the burning metal, hearing her weak cries. He remembered making the choice to help without thinking about consequences or rules. That feeling, that pure instinct to protect, was what had called the guardian flames the first time. He opened his eyes and stepped into the corridor. The flames surged toward him immediately, but the golden fire appeared around his body like a shield. The draconian fire crashed against it, testing, probing, searching for weakness. Daniel took another step, then another. Sweat poured down his face from the effort of concentration. Every muscle in his body was tense. The corridor stretched ahead of him, impossibly long. Each step required all of his focus. He thought about Karith's amber eyes. He thought about her small voice calling him Firekeeper. He thought about every child he had ever seen, human or alien, and how they all deserved someone to protect them. The guardian flames grew brighter. Halfway through the corridor, Daniel heard Patricia cry out behind him. He turned his head slightly and saw that the draconian fire had begun spreading toward his friends. They were too close to the entrance, and the heat was becoming dangerous. Without thinking, Daniel reached back with his mind. The guardian flames responded instantly, flowing backward along the corridor to surround Patricia and Henry. They gasped as the golden fire wrapped around them, creating a protective bubble. The draconian elders rose from their seats. Excited whispers filled the chamber. One elder spoke urgently to another in their native language. Even through his translator, Daniel could hear the shock in their voices. "Impossible," one elder breathed. "The guardian flame protecting multiple beings at once. This has not happened in 10,000 years." Solvara's eyes were wide with amazement. She held Karith closer, and the young dragon chirped with excitement, watching the golden flames dance. Daniel continued forward, now maintaining the shield around himself and his friends simultaneously. The strain was enormous. His head pounded, and his vision began to blur at the edges. But he kept walking, one foot in front of the other. The guardian flames held steady. The draconian fire grew more intense, as if the corridor itself was testing him harder. Flames licked at the golden shield from all directions. Daniel's legs trembled with exhaustion. He wanted to stop, to rest, but he knew stopping meant failure. It meant burning. It meant war between their peoples. He thought about Karith again, and the flames surged with new strength. The end of the corridor appeared ahead. 20 more steps. 15, 10. The draconian fire made one final push, roaring with intensity that made the entire chamber shake. The guardian flames blazed golden white, holding firm. Daniel took the last step and collapsed to his knees outside the corridor. The flames around him flickered but did not fade. Patricia and Henry rushed forward, still surrounded by the golden shield, and helped him stand. The council chamber erupted in voices. Draconians spoke over each other in their rumbling language. Some sounded angry, others amazed, still others fearful. The eldest council member raised his clawed hand for silence. "Bring forth the archives," he commanded. 2 Draconians left the chamber and returned moments later carrying a massive stone tablet. The surface was covered in symbols so old they had been worn smooth by time. The elder studied it carefully, running one claw along the ancient writing. "There is a legend," the elder began, his voice heavy with importance. "A legend most of us believed was merely a story told to younglings. It speaks of a time before our recorded history, when our ancestors traveled the stars in great colony ships. One of these ships crashed on a primitive world. The survivors were stranded, unable to repair their vessel or call for help." Daniel listened carefully, his breathing still heavy from the trial. The guardian flames around him had dimmed but still flickered softly. The elder continued. "The survivors encountered the native species of that world, primitive creatures barely aware, without language or tools. But these natives showed kindness to the stranded Draconians. They brought food, they helped build shelter, and in gratitude, our ancestors taught them many things. They taught them how to make fire, how to craft tools, how to protect their young." Henry Nash stepped forward, his eyes bright with understanding. "What world? Which species did they help?" The elder looked directly at Daniel. "The texts call it the Blue World. The natives were called the First Flamekin. Over generations, the Draconian survivors interbred with them, sharing their genetic gifts. But eventually, our ancestors died out on that world, and the descendants forgot their dragon heritage. The connection was lost." He paused. "Until now." "You're saying humans are descended from Draconians?" Patricia asked, her voice shaking. "Not descended," Solvara said, stepping forward with Kyrith still in her arms. "Related. The ancient texts say that both species share a common ancestor from long ago. When our people crashed on Earth, when they mixed with early humans, they awakened something dormant. They created the possibility of the guardian flame existing in your species." Daniel's mind raced. "So that's why I can do this. Somewhere in my DNA, there's a trace of ancient Draconian heritage." "More than a trace," the eldest council member said. "You carry the purest expression of the guardian gift we have seen in millennia. Most Draconians cannot manifest it anymore. Our bloodline has been diluted by war and time. But humans, isolated on your world for millions of years, preserved it." He looked around at the other council members. "We have been searching the galaxy for centuries, believing we were alone, the last of our kind. We never thought to look for our lost cousins among species we considered primitive." Kyrith squirmed in her mother's arms until Solvara set her down. The young dragon ran across the chamber floor to Daniel and wrapped her small claws around his leg. 6 months had passed since the trial of flames. Daniel stood on the observation deck of the new space station, watching construction teams work on the outer sections. Human and Draconian workers moved side by side, building something that would have seemed impossible just a year ago. The station had been named the Bridge of Flames, and it hung in orbit between Earth and Dracor Prime, a symbol of the renewed bond between their peoples. Kyrith sat beside him, much larger now. Her scales had regained their brilliant crimson color, and her wings had healed completely. She could fly now, soaring through the station's central hub with joy. But she still chose to spend most of her time with Daniel, following him like a devoted companion. "Firekeeper," Kyrith said, her language skills improving every day. "When do the new students arrive?" Daniel smiled. "In 2 hours. Are you ready to meet them?" Kyrith's eyes sparkled with excitement. She had been preparing for weeks, eager to be part of the first interspecies education program. Draconian younglings would come to learn about human culture, while human children would discover the ways of the dragon people. The past 6 months had brought discoveries that changed everything humanity thought they knew about themselves. Dr. Lisa Green had led a team of scientists in studying the Guardian Flame phenomenon. Working alongside draconian scholars, they found that approximately 1 in every 10,000 humans carried the dormant genetic markers needed to manifest the flames. But having the genes was not enough. The ability only activated during moments of genuine selfless protection. A person had to be willing to risk everything to save another life, with no thought of reward or recognition. That moment of pure compassion awakened the ancient gift sleeping in their blood. Gregory Mills, a nurse from Earth, had been the second human to manifest the flames. He had been treating victims of a shuttle accident when fire broke out in the medical bay. Without hesitation, he had grabbed 2 children and shielded them with his body. The Guardian Flames had appeared, protecting all 3 of them until rescue arrived. Nicole Baker, a firefighter, had discovered her ability while pulling a family from a burning building. Christopher Young, a teacher, had manifested the flames while protecting his students during an earthquake. Each story was different, but they all shared the same core truth. Love and courage awakened the ancient fire. The door to the observation deck opened, and Patricia Cole entered with Alan Ross and Sophie Turner, 2 scientists who had been studying the genetic connection between humans and draconians. They carried data tablets filled with their latest findings. "Daniel, you need to see this," Sophie said, her voice excited. "We found something in the ancient draconian DNA samples. The colony ship that crashed on Earth, it didn't just share genetic material with early humans. They deliberately modified human DNA to carry the Guardian Flame trait forward." Alan brought up a holographic display showing complex genetic sequences. It was intentional. The stranded draconians knew they were dying. They knew they couldn't return home. So they made a choice. They gave humanity a gift, a piece of themselves that would survive even after they were gone. Daniel looked at the swirling genetic patterns, seeing how human and draconian DNA intertwined. They wanted to be remembered. "More than that," Patricia said softly. "They wanted their values to survive. The Guardian Flame isn't just about fire or genetics. It's about protecting others, about choosing compassion over violence. They encoded that lesson into human DNA, hoping that one day we would understand." Kyrith pressed her snout against Daniel's hand, and he felt the familiar warmth of their bond. Over the months, he had learned that the connection went deeper than flames or genetics. When he touched Kyrith, he could sometimes sense her emotions, her thoughts. She could share visions with him, showing him memories that felt ancient and new at the same time. In those visions, Daniel had seen the crash on prehistoric Earth. He had seen draconian survivors injured and afraid, being approached by early humans. He had seen those primitive humans bringing food and water, offering help to creatures they did not understand. That first act of kindness had started everything. The intercom chimed. "Daniel Porter, please report to the main docking bay. The transport ship from Earth is arriving." Daniel and Kyrith made their way through the station corridors. They passed Solvara, who was now serving as the Draconian ambassador. The war matron had become one of humanity's strongest advocates, arguing before the Draconian High Council that humans were not aliens, but long-lost family. The docking bay was filled with people. Human parents stood with their children, some nervous, some excited. Commander Hudson had helped organize the program, ensuring that everything was done with care and respect. Henry Nash stood ready with his team of translators, though many children were already learning each other's languages. The transport ship doors opened, and 20 draconian younglings emerged. They were all roughly Kyrith's age, their scales showing every color of the spectrum. Their parents followed behind, massive adult draconians who looked around the human station with curiosity and caution. One young dragon, his scales deep blue, hesitated at the doorway. He looked frightened by the crowd of humans. A human girl, maybe 8 years old, noticed his fear. Without prompting from any adult, she walked up to him and held out her hand. "Hi," she said simply. "My name is Emma. Do you want to be friends?" The young dragon looked at her hand, then at her face. Slowly, carefully, he reached out with his claw and touched her palm. For a moment, nothing happened. Then faint golden flames appeared around their joined hands, so subtle they were almost invisible. The crowd gasped. The dragon's parents stepped forward in amazement. The little girl giggled with delight. "It tickles," Emma said, smiling.